Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is July 25th, 2021. You're now watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. So I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. It's another Sunday and another show. This weekend was a pretty, slow weekend. Well, slow as in it was, relaxing. I spent some time with friends. I did a few campaign things. And then, today was just, a relaxed day. The weather this weekend was actually good. It wasn't too hot, wasn't raining. So today on my show, we have a very special guest. We have Madam Mayor Gail Artola. Gail Artola is the mayor of Rochelle Park here in Jersey. It is a great town, and Mayor Artola has done a phenomenal job. Last year, there was a bit of a dispute in the election in Rochelle Park. There were a few council members, or actually in Rochelle Park, they call them, I think they are committee members, right? So there was an issue there in which an election or two was overturned, and Mayor Artola was instrumental in making that happen. So let us bring her on and welcome her on to our show. Mayor Artola, how are you?
Ronald, how are you? So great to be here.
It's great to have you on. So, Mayor Gail Artola, you're kind of like a big deal here in Bergen County politics and in, Rochelle Park. So, before we begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and what made you get into politics?
Okay, great. Well, I'm from Rochelle Park. I've lived here my whole life. If you count the first 2 weeks of my life, I've had 5 addresses in this town. So I started out in an apartment complex, and then my parents rented a house, which they eventually bought. I lived in a couple apartments after that, and now I have the house that I live in now. Rochelle Park is in a flood zone, and the house I'm in is in a flood zone. So in 2010,
Wow.
yeah. So in 2010, I bought a house in Rochelle Park in the flood zone. I grew up in the town, and we've been through floods before. They're 100-year floods. I did the math. We had a flood in 1999. So the next flood wouldn't be until 2099, according to the math, but didn't work out that way. So 2010, I bought my house, and 2011, my house got flooded. It's a one-floor house, so the entire house was flooded. So I think it's about a third of the town, maybe up to 2/3 of the town that's in a flood zone. So most of my neighbors repaired their houses and moved back in. I took the option to get the house raised so that if there's a flood, the living space is above the flood zone. There was, I think, about 9 of us that decided to do that. So it was a good idea, but the bureaucracy involved, it took me 2 years to get back into the house. You're dealing with different agencies. You're dealing with the New Jersey DEP. I had the bank who I had the mortgage with. I was getting the government loan, so you go through that department, FEMA, the insurance company, and the town. So the town was very good, but a lot of the issues that I was dealing with were bigger than the town. So I started going to the township meetings, and every few months just give them an update. And I told them, listen, I know this is bigger than you, that this isn't Rochelle Park politics or government that is causing these issues, but I just need you to know what's happening to me, because if you encourage us to lift the homes, this is what people are going to run into. So it was very annoying because I only owned the house a year and a half. I was out of it for 2. I was out of it longer than I was in it, paying a mortgage on it the whole time. Right. So I finally moved in back home in 2013, and but because of that, the people in the town and the township got to know me. And a year or 2 after that, there was an opening on the planning board. And I was asked by the mayor at the time, who was Frank Valenzuela. He asked me if I'd like to serve on the planning board. He was very impressed with how I handled myself, presenting the information to them, not taking it out on them or getting angry at them, because I knew it wasn't their fault. But I kept my frustrations in check, even though I was very frustrated about the house. And so I started on the planning board. I served there for a few years, and then they were looking for someone to run, and they asked me. So I never had any political ambitions, but it's really just one thing led to another. I was a flood victim. I just needed my voice to be heard, and I was heard. And so I ran for election in 2019. My term began in January of 2020, and then here in 2021, I'm mayor.
Okay, great. Yes. Okay. So in Rochelle Park, it's a different form of system, right?
Sure. So
The mayor is selected out of the council people, right?
correct. So we're what's called a township committee. I learned that there's like 30 different government setups. So a lot of towns, people are familiar with mayor and council, but we work a little bit different. We're a township committee. So we're a committee of 5 people, and they're 3-year terms, and the terms are staggered. So you have 1 year where it's 2 seats, another year where it's 2 seats, and then the third year where it's 1 seat. So it's a rotating staggered elections. So I ran in the year of 1 seat. I ran by myself. I didn't have a running.
And you ran in 2019, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I ran, and the election was November 2019, and then I began January 2020. So the way a township committee works is the committee members, the members of 5, pick amongst themselves one of the 5 to be mayor. Mayors, it's really chairman of the board. So mayor doesn't have any veto power. All the votes are equal. So when a mayor votes, it's equal to the other 4 members of the township committee. Mayor runs the meetings. There are some things that the mayor does that the others don't do, but for the most part, it's considered a weak mayor when it comes to the power. But yeah, so the 5 of us are equals.
All right. So the mayor is selected from the committee members, and the mayor is selected to serve for how long? For just 1 year?
For 1 year. So every January we have what's called the reorganization meeting, and that's when it's determined who's mayor.
Now, after you serve for that 1 year, can they select you to serve again? Or
yeah. It doesn't have to change. It could. Most times it does, but yeah, it has happened where people have served 2 years in a row.
Now, is there a limit as to how many consecutive years a mayor can serve, or?
I'm not aware of any. I don't think there are. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go back a bit. So your house was flooded, right? Flooded back in 2013, and you went through all this chaos, and it was the flood that actually somehow got you into politics, right?
Yeah.
So
if you go back to the beginning of it, that's really what happened. Yeah.
Right. So due to the flood, it forced you to go to all the planning meetings, right? And it got you, got you involved in the whole process, right? And in this whole process, you met with Frank, who was mayor, and he asked you if you wanted to serve, right? And that's how you got your feet wet. Literally, and also,
quite literally, unfortunately, and figuratively as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you've been mayor now for you were selected as mayor in January, right?
In January, right. Okay. So it's been 7 months, yeah.
Okay, so 7 months. So how is it being mayor?
Well, the attitude I'm taking is, because it's only a year, I just want to do as much as I can in this year of mayor. So in the beginning of this year, a lot of things were still locked down. Things are starting to open, but I've had, it's just such an honor to be mayor. But one of the things I like to do is spread positivity and just really get out there and honor people. We had a young man who got his Eagle Scout, so it was such an honor to do the proclamation at his ceremony. Just the other day, I was with kids at the pool. I swam on my high school and college teams, and so I was encouraging the kids on the swim team to swim, and so I raced every single kid just to, encourage them. Right. Of course, I gave them a head start, the little ones, but yeah, and then I raced the coaches too, so I was pretty exhausted at the end of it. But they did a whole pep rally around it. The parents, the coaches were all cheering the kids on, and if I could be part of that to encourage that. And I talked to the parents afterwards, and they said, our kids, they've just been in front of screens. Their whole life has been screens, and we can't break the habit, Right. And forcing them to get on the swim team and then to do something fun like this. They were so excited to race the mayor. So
yeah, definitely right.
Yeah,
and especially in this COVID time, right? Everybody is doing everything on Zoom or on their laptops, right? Yeah. So there isn't a lot of things that people can do like on like an actual event, right? But swimming is one of those things that you can't do on Zoom. You've got to be there, and you have to have a pool, right?
That's right.
So it's definitely one of the things that you have to kind of do in person. Yeah. Okay, so Mayor, what is your day job? Like, what do you do?
Work in a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's my day job. I do clinical supply, um, which is the labeling, packing, and distribution of the test products. So um, right now things are split. I'm working from home some days, most days, and then I go in as needed, which averages about once a week, depending on the projects that I'm doing. Any
Okay.
type of label printing, inspection, and actual labeling, of course, I have to do there. So, yeah, I've been working from home, but ever since the beginning of this, I've been going in. So I haven't been on complete lockdown like most people have.
Right. Okay. So, Mayor, last year during the 2020 race, on the presidential level, there's a lot of people in the U.S. that felt like the vote wasn't entirely fair. Maybe there were some, fraudulent aspects of the vote, and the integrity of the 2020 vote on the presidential level is being questioned by a lot of people, right? Um, in Rochelle Park, something similar also happened, in which the results of the committee race weren't certified for a while, and it went into the whole court process, right? And so, can you give us a little rundown on the story behind that?
Sure. So when we got the election results, there were two seats open, and the results were very close. And so we had a Democrat who had the top spot. One vote behind was a second Democrat. Five votes behind was a Republican, and then about between 30 and 40 votes was the other Republican. So anytime there's a close election, it's normal to just have a recount or question it just because it's so close.
Hmm.
Well, here, because this was the year, you got to remember that everything was a forced mail-in ballot. There was no
Right.
in-person ballot voting, with the exception of handicapped people who required the assistance. But for the most part, aside from those few people, it was 100% mail-in voting. So because there was a lot of confusion with that, it was really worth looking into an election that was so close. So at first we had asked for a recount, and the recount happened, and surprisingly, the recount came out exactly the same. And
Okay.
actually, the people who were in charge of all the votes were very impressed that it came out that way, because they had to hand count ballots, uh, hundreds, thousands of ballots in the
Right.
county. So they were very happy that the results came out the same. But one of the things that we noticed was that there's a nursing home in town, and there was a bunch of the nursing home ballots were dropped off at the same place, because they had all the drop-off locations for the mail-in ballots. So they were dropped off at the same mail-in and at the same time, because these were all stamped when they were received.
Right.
So and that was illegal, because you're only allowed to help, all of us are only allowed to help three people. Well, you had I think 34, or it was over 30 votes that were cast at the same time or dropped off at the same time. So that was investigated as to what was going on in the nursing home. And then, so when they took a closer look at it, the signatures weren't matching. It looked like it could have possibly been an issue of ballot harvesting, which that term was used a lot during the
Right.
2020 election. So,
Now, Gail, sorry, Madam
yeah,
Mayor, can you explain to the audience what ballot harvesting means?
sure. So, ballot harvesting is when, I mean, it can happen in so many ways, but where either ballots are collected or are somehow falsified, or one person is controlling the ballots more than the legal three limit.
Right.
So, me and you and I could help three people
Hmm.
fill out their ballot, and I'm supposed to sign that I've helped them. So, these people at the nursing home, there were signatures. These people have signed for more than three ballots.
Okay.
So the legal limit is 3. You're allowed to help 3
So
people.
there were multiple ballots where it looked like it was the same person signing, right? But
Yes,
continuously, not just for 3, which is the legal limit.
right.
Up to how many would you say?
I think there were around 30 ballots that
30.
came out of the nursing home. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was brought to court, um, and when the judge had to look at all this too, and um, the judge had made a decision to allow these ballots to be looked at. But when she made the decision, so first we did the recount, then it went to the court, and then the judge I remember this, it was December 23rd. The judge was going to make a ruling as to whether this was going to move forward into court or not. And the Democrat candidates did not show up. And the judge questioned it, and she said, "Where are they? I'm going to make a decision about their election. They should be here." They were notified. They notified the judge that they were served the papers. They were notified and it was Zoom court. You didn't even have to go in person.
Right.
She delayed it a day just to be sure to give them the chance to show up again. Well, delaying it a day was Christmas Eve. So court actually met on Christmas Eve to give them a chance to come to court. They delayed it that day. They still didn't show up. And she made the decision to go ahead and investigate this election.
Okay.
So at that point, copies of the envelope. So it's kind of hard to remember because it's a while ago, but if you remember the ballot, your ballot came and you filled out the ballot, you put it in an envelope. There was your name and address on that envelope, and you also had to sign your name, print your name, sign your name, and write your address. So we had copies of those envelopes. So there were 2. There was the inside of the envelope where you signed, and then the outside where the address was. So some people had filled out the inside of the ballot. They had a different address. They had moved, but it was still counted in a Rochelle Park election. So there were so many, and that's just one example. There were people who signed their name in the wrong place, or they signed a different name, or they had the wrong address. There were many inconsistencies. So all those were looked at. We had copies of all those envelopes and questioned what we could. We found that there were the nursing home ones that may not have, possibly should not have been counted.
Those 30, right? Those 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there were other ballots that weren't counted that probably should have been counted. So there were people in Rochelle Park.
Now, Madam Mayor, what types of ballots weren't counted that should have been counted?
So there were people who, there were a few people, and some of them chose to testify in court, that they really wanted their ballot to be counted. So they chose to testify in court. So I forget how many there were, but 7 of them really chose to testify. Mm-hmm. Some of them were legitimately rejected. Some of them had moved out of town. Some of them, they couldn't get in contact with them for whatever reason. Some of them chose not to go through the whole court procedures. Right. That maybe that made them nervous or whatever. Everyone's reasons are different. But there were 7 who chose to. So there's 7 different stories. Some of them, they brought their ballots down on election day, down to the polling center. And they were misinformed on how to properly put the ballot in the box or fill it out. There were others, like I said, each one had a different story as to why they were rejected. Okay. But they told their stories to the judge. They told them whether they had dropped it in a box, whether they went there on election day and signed in the wrong spot, but were able to say, yes, that is my signature, whatever the case might be. So the judge heard all of those people, and the judge had chosen to allow those votes to be added of those people who testified. For the nursing home, there was really no way to remove those votes because once the ballot is received, the ballot is separated from the envelope, so you don't
Right.
know how the person voted. That's really a good thing about our election system, is that you don't know, there's privacy in how you vote.
Right.
So, so the judge made the decision to allow those to stay in, but the judge also made the decision to have those 7 who testified to have their votes added. And because their ballot was still in the envelope, it was never separated because their ballots weren't counted. So they were able to add those ballots.
Okay. So after adding those 7 ballots, it swung the race towards the Republican candidates, right?
Yeah. So there were 2 seats. So I believe for the one candidate received 7 more votes, and another candidate received 6 more votes, and one of the Democrats received 1 more vote.
Okay.
So because the lead Republican was behind by 5 votes, it actually put him into the first place spot, and won by 1 or 2 votes at that point.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then the outcome of the race was that 1 Republican won and 1 Democrat won, right?
correct.
Okay. But before, I mean, if you hadn't gone through all the court challenges, then it would have been 2 Democrats winning, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And what is the current makeup of the board, the committee board?
So right now it's 4 Republicans to the 1 Democrat.
Okay. And is that including you as the mayor?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the 5. Yeah.
Okay. So 4-1. Wow. So, this was on a small scale in Rochelle Park, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Now imagine on a bigger scale on the presidential level, right? So I mean, no wonder there's a lot of people who are questioning, whether or not this past election, and not just this past election, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, many elections could be marred by issues, that
Correct.
you guys
So
faced.
we don't know what happened in the nursing home,
Right.
and I will say that our local candidates, the Democrats who were running, they did not have their hands in any of this at all. That
Right.
anything that happened in the nursing home was possibly done by nursing home employees, staff. So we don't at all suspect that the Democrats in town had done anything. But
But can I ask you though,
yeah.
Madam Mayor, so why do you think when it came time to show up to court, why did the Democrats not show up?
I don't know if they just perhaps because the recount was the same. Maybe they just didn't think that anything was going to change any further. I really can't speak for them, but I just think that because the recount didn't change anything, that they just thought we were grasping at straws. But I really
Okay.
don't know. But
But
yeah,
you guys grasped at the right straws, right?
I guess so. I mean,
Right.
like I said, there were people whose ballots were in that group who were legitimately rejected. I had, one of them was, I think 2 of them had moved, and we knew that they had moved. Their houses were for sale. Their apartments were rented out, so there were some that were legitimately rejected. So, but yes, to answer your question about, Rochelle Park is a very small town.
What is
We
the
have found
population of Rochelle Park, by the way?
it's just under 6,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so if you figure, I mean, we found these 7. There could possibly be more that could have been counted. Like I said, there were people who didn't want to go through the hassle of going to court. So, there could be more. But if you figure that there were 7 votes out of a population of 6,000, and certainly not all those are registered voters.
In a random town like Rochelle Park, and I'm not saying that Rochelle Park is random, because I love Rochelle Park, but all I'm saying is that if you could just pick a town in Jersey like Rochelle Park, and in this instance there were cases where ballots that shouldn't have been counted were counted, just imagine what it's like on a big scale, on the federal level, right? So I mean, in your opinion, what is the best way that America as a country can go about to kind of clean up this whole voting process?
Well, you think too, the people who volunteered their time to go through these copies of their ballots, the legal representation involved. It was a lot of work just to get this
Right.
to happen on such a small scale. But I think one of the biggest things was the forced mail-in ballots. People were very confused on how that worked. Uh, there were drop boxes that people could go to drop boxes. Even not everyone was clear about the 3-person limit, that you could help 3 people or you're only allowed to drop off ballots for 3 people. Even how to sign the ballots. I mean, these people who made these mistakes are pretty smart people, and they just didn't understand how to sign it. There were 2 people who needed translators in court, so perhaps maybe a language barrier might have been an issue too, to understand what was going
Right.
on and how to fill it out. So it could be a bunch of things, but I think forcing people to mail in their ballot, having every ballot as a mail-in, was certainly, I heard stories, and many people did, of somebody told me that his sister got a ballot at her father's address, and she never lived at her father's address at that point. Her father had
Right.
moved there while she was an adult, so she never lived with her father at that address. And they call that maiden gate or maiden ballot harvesting, something like that, that they were,
Right.
people were getting ballots all over the place, past addresses. People were getting ballots at their past address and at their current address. So
Right.
what if somebody filled out a ballot in your name and my name that we just didn't even know that they received
Right.
it?
Well, I think that you were saying that, part of the reason that people might have gotten the ballots wrong or were confused was because the directions weren't that clear, and it was the first time that we had done this mail-in balloting. I mean, I think there are some people that would dare to say that perhaps certain parties want the directions to be unclear, right? Because if it's unclear, then it kind of gives rise to these mistakes, right? And so I mean, I'm just saying that perhaps for some people, they want the directions to not be clear. But I might just think, from my point of view, we're the greatest democracy in the history of the world, right? Voting is not only one of the foundations of our country, but it's what our country was founded on. So I think as a country, we need to get this together, right?
For sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're America, the land of the free, and
Right.
voting is so important. Um, and, people were used to doing it at a certain way. One of the things I remember when I was in high school, I went to Hackensack High School, and we had elections for class president. And our school principal asked the Board of Elections if they can bring in the actual voting machines into the school and put the candidates, the high school candidates on there, and that we would vote in an actual voting booth, a real voting booth, for a high school election. And the principal said he wanted that. He said a lot of students, when they turn 18, they're intimidated by the whole voting process. That if we had this practice vote, just voting in school elections in a real booth.
Right.
And I thought that even as an 18-year-old, when I was in high school, I thought that was so brilliant of him to do that to give us students that experience. And I wish more high schools would do something like that. I mean, I remember when I was little, my mom took me in to vote with her. Don't say out loud what I'm voting for, but just to, and parents do that now, but to be able to do that as a high schooler, I think was a great advantage.
Yeah.
And they don't teach those things in school, but
And the thing is, I mean, some of these voting machines, they're kind of complicated, right? I mean, I went in the booth this past November, or sorry, a couple of months ago for the primary when I voted for
right,
myself, right? And even I found the process a little bit, difficult, right? And I'm like, 39. So just imagine if you're like 79 or someone who's older, like my parents, I could see them getting confused on how to vote. So like the process in the voting booth it's not exactly like crystal clear, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sample ballot is usually very good that it's laid out how it will be in the machine. I think that was one of the issues. The questions were on the back of the ballot for the mail-in one. That even that wasn't clear. Don't forget to turn it over. I think
Right.
some of our local elections were on the back of the ballot. So, yeah. But even in a voting booth, it can be very intimidating. And you have you mentioned older people, but even younger people who
Oh
have never
yeah.
used one before, that it can be, and people would just prefer to stay away.
Right.
So,
But I will say this. I mean, after the results of the last election and all the controversy that that came about that, the fact that the results in Rochelle Park were overturned, right?
right,
I think that gave a lot of inspiration and hope to a lot of people, especially in Bergen County, who might have been like, disillusioned with the whole voting process. So I think when that happened, a lot of people hailed you as like a hero for kind of like, spearheading this and being a big instrumental part of, overturning this election and making sure that the right results were actually honored.
right. And the judge really looked into it. I think she handled things very fair.
Yeah.
Like I said, she even delayed it till Christmas Eve for the benefit of the Democrats in this. Um, she was very patient with the people who testified. She, uh, the legal teams on both sides to present the information to figure out what was the fairest thing. And really the volunteers who,
Right.
um, just really wanted a fair election. And, from the recounting, everything. It was a lot of work, but this is what we want. And
Yeah.
it was encouraging. Some of these people didn't know that their ballots were rejected.
Right.
That, these people were devastated when they found out, wait, my vote wasn't counted, that they were motivated to tell their story in court and try to tell their story as far as, what happened with their ballots and what may have, if there was an
Wow.
error or if they were misguided.
Now,
So,
Madam Mayor, next year in January, the committee in Rochelle Park, they're going to be, voting again for the new mayor, right?
right.
Are you actively gunning or campaigning to be mayor for like a second term, or?
No, I don't know about that. I mean, and this is why I'm trying to do as much in my year as I can because I don't want to look back in December and say, oh, I wish I did, I
Right.
wish I did, So, you know, a lot of people find it odd that we do rotate this way. It does depend on who wins the election. People cross aisles, it's happened, but sometimes they pick the person with the most experience. Um, it is more work, so some people aren't able to do it. It just depends on who wants to do it, who's available
Right.
to do it. But you know, I just I'm just honored to do it this year. I'm honored to just this past week I was police officer for a day, and I got to do a ride along, and it was so much fun for me, but it wasn't about me. It was honoring the police. What is their life in a day? Um, what's it like to be out there, especially in this environment where I mean most people in Rochelle Park really like our police, and
Right.
but that's not the case nationally, and people are you know I mean we see what's going on where people want to defund the police. They want to strip them of their abilities and their
Yeah.
power.
I
So
think that goes against what American values are, right? I think for by and large, I would say the vast majority of Americans we like, we respect, and we love our police. And I think that's true in Rochelle Park. That's true in Fairlawn, where I grew up, and I think it's true in most of the country. Now, Madam Mayor, if though you were selected for a second term, what would be some of the issues that you would want to focus on?
So, whether I'm mayor or not, we still all focus on issues. So, you know, right now we're trying to get, this year I'm working with the recreation board, trying to get more events, trying to get some momentum back. We started up some of the sports programs in the spring. We're looking forward to Rochelle Park Day in the fall. This year is the year of our 150th anniversary, which is very
Oh,
exciting.
really? Okay.
Yeah, and until now, everything was shut down, and I didn't want to plan and postpone,
Right.
but now we could start planning events for the fall to celebrate that. Our police are doing a national night out in a couple of weeks, so that'll be fun. Just trying to keep that momentum. We're a very small town. We're a square mile.
Right.
So we rely heavily on our volunteers. We have a fabulous volunteer fire department, and they're at every event. So they don't just volunteer to put out a fire. They're in the parades. They're at the graduations. The 8th graders do a fundraiser car wash that they help out with. Every time I turn around, the fire department is there. So we highly value our volunteers, and we rely heavily on them. The recreation department, all the events, it's done by volunteers. So whether I'm mayor next year or not, or even just doing it this year,
Right.
to keep, one of the other things we fight for is low taxes. We have one of the lowest tax rates in Bergen County, and that's what attracts a lot of people to our town. So it's a very attractive town for that reason too. So we have a lot of new families moved here since last year. A lot of homes went up for sale. A lot of people came out of New York City. So I have neighbors who are from New York City. It's a different world,
Right.
from here. So
I will
just
say this,
helping them
and I
adjust.
say this, right, and I say this every time I'm in Rochelle Park, that Rochelle Park has one of the best ShopRites in the whole world because it's 24/7, right? So I know that for me, especially because I might have a 1-year-old child, right?
Yes.
So I mean, sometimes in the middle of the night he needs diapers or something else, right? And that ShopRite is just fantastic because it's always open.
Well, it is funny because a lot of times people say, "Oh, I do my shopping at your ShopRite." I come to your town for that reason. So
Right.
they're a great business. They and yeah, I think that the 24-hour thing is, parents of infants are coming in. But actually, when I was in my 20s, I worked there overnight. I was stocking shelves.
Yeah, that's
So
right. Yeah, we were talking about this. You used to
yeah,
work at ShopRite,
I
and
worked at that ShopRite.
now you actually work across the street from ShopRite, which is
That's right,
City
in the
Hall.
township.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think for a lot of people that are kids in Rochelle Park, it's a rite of passage to work at
right.
ShopRite. I worked there when I was 14, and then when I was trying to get my feet on the ground after college, I needed some extra money, so I was working the night shift, stocking the shelves. So it's
Okay.
employed a lot of Rochelle Park kids for sure.
Yeah. I've had my two fundraisers in Rochelle Park, right? Because in Rochelle Park, you guys also have a lot of great restaurants, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah,
A lot of the best. So, and we were actually we met up this past Friday, right?
that's right.
At
That's
a
right.
local place in Rochelle Park called Woodstone, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're great for parties too. They have, sometimes I'm there for lunch with a friend,
Now,
but the upstairs has the
I
private party.
understand that you're the mayor, right? So, but I have to ask you, do you have a favorite restaurant in Rochelle Park?
It's hard to pick, but I do. You mentioned Woodstone. I like going there with my mom. We have some
Okay.
favorites there. She loves the pizza. I love the salmon salad. That's my favorite. El Asadero across the street. I was there today celebrating
Okay.
my friend's birthday.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
it's your parents' birthday.
my friend's
Oh,
birthday.
your
Yeah,
friend's
right. Yeah,
birthday.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Great.
yeah, we were celebrating there today, and we have the staples like Longhorn and Outback. We have those on Route 17
Yeah.
along the way. There's Nanny's if you want to.
Nanny's,
It's
yeah,
there
that's where
for.
I had my birthday party for my son and my
Yes, that was
fundraiser,
fun.
right? Yeah.
His first birthday party, and he gets a nice place like that. I was just there last week for a retirement party, so
Okay.
that's the place to go for special occasions. So yeah, so
Great.
we're very fortunate. We also have great pizza shops. For a small town, we feed you well here.
Right. All right. Well, Madam Mayor, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know you've got a busy schedule because you're helping out the kids, you're riding along with the police, you're doing this and that. So you've got a packed schedule. So I want to thank you first of all for taking the time to come on our show. I'm gonna have to say this though. I'm kind of glad that your house got flooded, because if it never got flooded, if it wasn't flooded, you would have never gone, through this whole process. You would have never
Probably
gone,
not.
into politics. So everything happens for like a reason, right?
That's
So
correct.
your house
That is
got
true.
flooded, and it literally swept you into politics. So yeah. So I want to thank you once again, Madam Mayor, and I hope you'll come on again. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was fabulous, and I wish you the best. And please give a kiss to baby Donald.
Oh,
He is the
definitely.
cutest kid.
And just for people who are watching, if they want to find you on Facebook, because you have a great social media presence, right?
Yes.
They could just search for Gail Artola, right? I
Yeah,
believe.
there's the Gail Artola page, and then there's the Mayor Gail Artola page.
Okay,
So they
great.
can, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Mayor
Thank
Artola.
you. Thank
And
you
we'll
so much.
be seeing you very soon, okay?
Okay, very good.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was my exclusive tonight with Madam Mayor Gail Artola. What a great lady. Not only is she brilliant, but she is a great leader. She has really led the township of Rochelle Park in a new direction, in a great direction, right? So, thank God her house was flooded. She probably doesn't want to hear me say that, but it's a good thing that her house got flooded, because it, like I said, it literally swept her into politics. And if she wasn't in power, who knows? The results of the election last time in Rochelle Park would have still, stood if people like Gail and others didn't fight for it, right? So because they fought, the election was overturned for the better, because the actual results were actually, represented. So, this shows that our democracy still works. And, we just have to fight, right? We have to fight through the court systems. We have to fight with every breath that we have. All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Please join me next Sunday live it's August 1st at 8 p.m. live from our Facebook page. If you have any ideas, or if you want to come on the show, if you think you have a great story, you could email us, right, at realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com. realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com. And once again, you can always visit my campaign and my website at ronaldjosephlin.com. ronaldjosephlin.com. All right, guys, it's been fantastic talking to you tonight. It's been a lovely weekend. I think this week is also going to be a lovely week. It's not going to be too hot. It's not going to be too cold. I don't think it's going to rain. It's going to be great. My campaign chugs on, as do all our campaigns. So next time I have an event, which I think will be soon, I'll keep you guys posted. In the meantime, have a great night with the great rest of your weekend. Have a happy work week, and I'll see you all next Sunday. All right, guys. Bye-bye.